to another video. Purple Political Talk here. Today is Thursday, July the 29th of 2021. And today we're going to be discussing the 2022 midterm elections and discuss in more detail what the latest data from the 2022 US Senate and US House races tell us. So for this video, we're going to be taking a look at some polling data from individual races that we do have. And we're also going to be taking a look at the prediction markets. I think that's one of the best ways to look at elections and also this far out because it's people's money and, people tend to, be more careful when they stream. So I do think that's actually a really good way to, big data point, right, that we can take a look at. But before we do dive into this video, I wanted to remind you guys to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to be up to date with our latest content. And I also want to remind you guys that channel memberships are now open if you wanted to become a Purple Political Talk channel member and help out the channel. In that spirit, I did want to give a very big shout out to our Purple Political Talk channel member, David Maxwell. We really could not do this without you. So now that we've gotten all of this out of the way, let's get started with the video. So for this video, I'm going to look at polls and different data in different places. So I'm going to start by talking in the FiveThirtyEight. We have some recent polls that are, relatively important. So we have the 3 races that have been added. Remember, at this point in time, polling data is scarce because we are not near as close to the primaries. We're not in that 2022 feel yet, right? For election season, it's very important to get polls right, and that's going to end up happening eventually. It just ends up happening that currently, in the point where we are now, that's something that's just not happening based on, we're not seeing polls from every state. That's the point I'm trying to get to. So, we have 3 states that we actually have some Senate polls from. We have New Hampshire, which is actually going to be a very interesting race. We have the race in Colorado, which is actually another interesting race, and the race in Florida. So, I'm going to start with the New Hampshire polls, which are the most recent. A July 15th to July 19th University of New Hampshire poll has Hassan ahead in 2 scenarios against Bolduc and Ayotte. So again, Republican candidates that are moderately strong in this state, but they will still lose by Hassan within the margin of error, +4, and then Bolduc will lose by 10%. That's way out of the margin of error. But the big interesting race here is against Maggie Hassan, we have Sununu +1. I think this is one of the biggest data points for the Republicans, and this shows them they could make the race in New Hampshire a state that, has been wildly, turning more Democratic over the years. They could make a pickup here if they run the right candidate, in this case, Chris Sununu. I do think that if they run Chris Sununu, I think they're going to, end up doing a very good job in this state. Going on to the other Senate poll that we have the state of Colorado. This is without a doubt not going to happen. If Lauren Boebert does end up running against Michael Bennet, we can expect a blowout. Lauren Boebert is popular in her district. I don't know how far else she would go. I think that she does lose this race by 13 points if she does end up running. And I think the next poll is the most, important and the most influential. We have a poll, the Political Matrix and the listener group has Rubio +21. This is completely insane, and I think if these polls end up manifesting for the Republican Party, we could say Florida is pretty much safe, and the Democratic Party they don't even have to go to Florida anymore. Now, I think that these polls, what they tell us is the general environment. We see the more polarized the country is becoming. In states that, used to be more competitive, we're seeing more stronger results for the parties that, end up being the winners there. And truly, the amount of really close races are truly diminishing. And that speaks closer to the amount of, polarization that we have in the U.S. currently. I want to take a look at some other polls. These are more talking about what the country is feeling now. The general atmosphere of the country. This is using the Real Clear Politics polls, which I think Real Clear Politics is actually a great website to take a look at polls when discussing, job approval, direction of country, and things like that, because they have all of those votes, or polls rather, combined in one place. So one of the things that we are seeing here is that Biden's approval rating is diminishing. I mean, you have polls like Monmouth, which are more Democratic leaning, having it up by 5, and polls like Rasmussen, where you have them down by 4. So I think that ultimately it's very interesting, and I do think that in these states we're going to see, or in this, in that polling data, we're going to end up seeing Biden's approval rating diminish, which at the general, point of the country, I think that when looking at the environment where the country is in, having a lower approval rating, I mean, recent presidents, Trump and Biden, have had lower approval ratings than almost any of their predecessors at this point in their presidency. So I do think that kind of also speaks to the environment of polarization that we're in. But also, I mean, moving forward, the infrastructure bill is going to play a somewhat impact. It's going to be one of the Democrats' big things that look what we're doing come 2022 midterms. Now, I think it's also very interesting that we see some general congressional approval, which these polls are always horrendous for the congressional approval. No one ever approves of Congress because we all know that Congress is just very, very they're corrupt, and they stay where they are. They don't do anything pretty much. But I think that this is what mostly speaks to the point that the country currently is in a position where politically there's very high stakes, and we're seeing a lot of it's not as strong, we could say, right, for the party for the both parties, because as more polarized the country is, and everything that happens, it's going to be harder to win elections. Now I do want to go on to the predict it and talk about some of these markets. So this is important because this is people's money, and I think that when people put money on the line for something, I really do think that they should believe in what they're doing, and I think that this is a good way to kind of see where they're headed. I mean, of course, this is not as strong as other forms of data, but I do think it's going to be a big indicator, especially when you have these amount of difference between the price of the stock. So for the Republicans, who wins the party, or who wins the House in 2022? The Republicans have a very big lead over the Democrats. And I think it just comes down to a lot of different things. And I do agree with what predicted.org has, and what people generally are just saying. I think that it really comes down to the fact that redistricting is going to heavily favor the Republican Party. And generally I think that the cards, the way they were dealt back in 2020 with very narrow majorities in Congress for the Democrats, the White House as well, party fatigue will continue to increase. And I think it's going to come to a boiling point, even though they haven't really been in power for that long. Why? Because nothing has really been able to get done because of congressional gridlock. And unfortunately for the Democrats, I really think, and I'm one of the mentality that if the Democrats would have waited for 2024 to happen, I think their best strategy for long term, so they can win more House and Senate races in the future, so they can win more White House races in the future, what they should have done is not go so hard on, the presidential race, because truly nothing substantial was going to change. But what they needed to do was gain more support in Congress to the point where they had big majorities and they could block Trump. That way, when they came to 2024, it was going to be easier if they had, the clear path for presidencies. After 8 years of Trump, there was going to be some insane fatigue. However, the Democrats did not do that, and I think now they're going to end up feeling the effects. This House race is going to be the showing of that. And if you take a look at the last 90 days, how things have changed, things have gone up and down, but generally speaking, these have stayed pretty relative. Now, what is, I would say, a very close race, and it's going to be very interesting to see where it ends up landing, is the race for the U.S. Senate. This map, a lot of people have thought, oh, it's very favorable towards the towards the Democrats in certain ways. Like, getting a majority in this map is not that hard. They just have to win in a couple key races, and that's it. However, I do think that the Republicans have certainly increased their chance in some of these races. Of course, there's still races that are going to flip, but with the candidates who are running, or they could run, I think in certain places around the country, we're going to end up seeing, races balance out. I do remember that in 2018, we saw that, both parties won seats and they flipped seats. What ended up happening is just that ended up balancing out. But recent days, and last week, we've seen this, very close, 51-52. So it's pretty much a 50-50 tie right now on who can win the U.S. Senate. And I do also agree with this. The Senate map right now is, we don't know. And I think, again, what I was talking about, the party environment, what the country is feeling, that's going to have a huge impact when it comes to the election, because ultimately, the way that voters feels has an impact on a nationwide level and House races and all those different things. And I think also you have to remember momentum. If you have a lot of momentum in House races, that might help candidates a ballot. And I do think that moving forward, the Republicans do have a very big edge when it comes to the House of Representatives. So I think these are very interesting polling data and some other data on the 2022 midterms. I want to see what you guys think down in the comments. And I hope you guys enjoyed the prediction, or not the prediction, but the polling data. So thank you guys so much for watching, and goodbye.